As flames devoured the hills of Pinecrest, a single silhouette darted through the inferno, Skyler, a dog with courage forged in fire. His mission, to defy the odds and rescue the family who had once saved him. But in a race against time, would his loyalty be enough to triumph over nature's fury? The night sky over Pinecrest glowed with an eerie red hue. In the distance, the roar of a wildfire drowned out the usual quiet of the small mountain town. Inside a modest home at the forest's edge, the Miller family was oblivious to the impending danger. Emily Miller, an 8-year-old with a shy smile and golden curls, sat cross-legged on the living room floor, piecing together her favorite puzzle. Beside her, Skyler, a sleek Australian shepherd with alert amber eyes, lay curled up, his ears twitching at every sound. The warm glow of the fireplace painted the room in soft hues, a stark contrast to the chaos brewing outside. "Skyler, look!" Emily exclaimed, holding up a puzzle piece triumphantly. "It's the barn door." Skyler perked up his ears, leaning closer as if inspecting her progress. Emily giggled, scratching behind his ears. "You're the best helper ever," she whispered. Skyler responded with a soft nuzzle, his tail wagging gently. In the kitchen, Lauren Miller was busy packing essentials into a duffel bag. Her phone buzzed incessantly with evacuation alerts, but she tried to remain calm for Emily's sake. "Just in case," she muttered to herself, shoving bottled water and a flashlight into the bag. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, carrying with it the acrid smell of smoke. Skyler's head shot up, his body stiffening. He sniffed the air, then let out a low, rumbling growl. Lauren froze mid-step. "Skyler," she called, her voice tinged with unease. She walked into the living room, glancing at the dog who was now standing, ears pricked and eyes locked on the front door. "Emily, put your shoes on," Lauren said, her tone urgent. "We need to leave." Emily looked up, confused. "But why? I'm not done with the puzzle." Lauren knelt beside her, gripping her shoulders gently. "Sweetheart, we'll finish it later. Right now, we need to go." Skyler senses something, and I think we should trust him. As if to confirm her words, Skyler barked sharply and bolted to the front door, pawing at it frantically. Lauren's heart sank. She walked to the window, pulling back the curtain. Her breath caught in her throat. The fire wasn't distant anymore. It was here. Embers floated through the air like fiery snowflakes, and the dry grass outside their home had begun to smolder. "Emily, now!" Lauren shouted, grabbing her daughter's shoes and thrusting them into her hands. She swung the emergency bag over her shoulder and called out, "Skyler, let's go." But Skyler didn't move toward the car. Instead, he turned and bolted down the hallway, barking furiously. "Skyler!" Emily screamed, dropping her shoes and running after him. "Emily, no!" Lauren cried, but it was too late. Her daughter disappeared into the smoke-filled corridor. Panic clawed at Lauren's chest as she tried to follow, but the thick smoke made it nearly impossible to see. Flames were now licking at the front porch, and every second felt like an eternity. "Skyler, please," Lauren whispered, clutching the doorframe, her voice trembling with desperation. Then, through the chaos, she heard it, a sharp bark, clear and commanding. Skyler was calling to her, his message unmistakable. He had found Emily, with flames closing in and the house shrouded in smoke. Skyler's silhouette appeared faintly in the distance, carrying something small and precious in his jaws. Was it too late for them all to escape? The heat was unbearable, a wall of fire raging with a deafening roar that threatened to consume everything in its path. Smoke thickened the air, stinging Skyler's eyes and burning his lungs. But he didn't slow down. He couldn't. Somewhere ahead, Emily was waiting for him, her cries barely audible over the chaos. His paws, singed and raw from the blistering floor, pushed forward with unrelenting determination. Flames danced along the walls, crackling and spitting embers that rained down like fiery needles. Skyler ducked low, his keen instincts guiding him through the smoke-choked hallway. The fire hissed and snarled as if alive, blocking his path with a collapsing beam. For a split second, he hesitated, his sharp eyes calculating. Then, with a burst of adrenaline, he leaped over the burning wood, his tail narrowly missing the licking flames. Ahead, Emily's faint sobs reached his ears, cutting through the chaos like a beacon. His heart, loyal and unyielding, pounded with urgency. He found her huddled in the corner of her room, clutching her stuffed bunny, Floppy, against her chest. Her face was streaked with tears and soot, her tiny body trembling. Skyler barked sharply, snapping her out of her terrified daze. She looked up, her eyes locking with his, and in that moment, she understood Skyler had come for her. The dog moved closer, nudging her with his nose as if to say, "We have to go. Now." Emily hesitated, staring at the fiery hallway beyond, fear rooting her in place. Skyler barked again, his voice commanding but filled with reassurance. He gripped the sleeve of her pajama top gently in his teeth, tugging her toward the doorway. Slowly, shakily, she rose to her feet, holding tightly to his fur with one hand and clutching Floppy with the other. The journey back was a gauntlet of terror. A second beam crashed down behind them, sending sparks flying and blocking the path they had just crossed. Skyler shielded Emily with his body, his fur singeing under the relentless heat. Emily coughed and stumbled, her small legs struggling to keep up. But Skyler pressed forward, steady and determined. When another wave of flames surged ahead, cutting off their escape route, Skyler froze, his mind racing. Turning sharply, he spotted a narrow gap through the kitchen, the only chance they had. He nudged Emily forward, guiding her through the smoke-filled room as the fire roared in pursuit. A piece of burning debris fell, grazing his back, but he didn't flinch. He pushed Emily forward, making sure she was clear of danger before following close behind. Finally, the front door came into view, framed by flickering flames. Skyler barked frantically, urging Emily onward. Her tiny hand gripped his tail as he pulled her toward the exit, each step feeling like a battle against the inferno's relentless fury. When they burst into the cool night air, it was as though time itself paused. Emily collapsed onto the grass, coughing and crying, her hands clutching Floppy tightly. Skyler stood over her, his legs trembling but steadfast, his body a shield between her and the burning house. His fur was charred, his breaths labored, but his eyes, those unwavering amber eyes, remained fixed on her, as if silently asking, "Are you safe? Are you okay?" Lauren, who had been frozen in panic near the edge of the yard, ran to them, dropping to her knees as she pulled Emily into her arms. "Oh, my baby," she cried, her voice breaking. "Skyler, you saved her." She reached out to stroke the brave dog's head, her tears falling onto his singed fur. Skyler let out a soft whine, leaning into her touch for just a moment before his legs buckled. He collapsed onto the ground, his chest heaving as exhaustion overtook him. "Skyler!" Emily screamed, throwing her arms around him. "Don't leave us, Skyler, please." Lauren's hands trembled as she pressed her ear to his side, listening to his faint, shallow breaths. "Hold on, boy," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You've done so much, just hold on." The wail of sirens echoed in the distance, signaling the arrival of firefighters and rescue teams. But for Lauren and Emily, the world had narrowed to this one moment, to the dog who had risked everything for them. Skyler's courage had been boundless, his love unwavering, and now, as the flames began to die down, his family clung to the hope that his light wouldn't fade with them. This story of sacrifice and loyalty isn't over yet. Skyler's bravery reminds us of the unbreakable bond between humans and their furry companions, a bond that defies fear, pain, and even fire itself. If you've ever experienced a connection with an animal that's touched your soul, hit the like button and share your story in the comments. Skyler's legacy deserves to inspire the world. The flames roared behind them, devouring the house inch by inch. But for the first time that night, the Millers were outside, safe under the open sky. Emily clung to Skyler, her tears soaking into his singed fur, while Lauren knelt beside them, her hands trembling as she examined the brave dog who had risked everything. His chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths, and though his body was motionless, his eyes remained locked on Emily, as if assuring her that she was safe now. The rescue team arrived moments later, their flashing lights cutting through the haze of smoke. Firefighters sprang into action, dousing the blaze that had reduced the Miller's home to a fiery skeleton. Paramedic approached Lauren, urging her to move Emily to safety, but she shook her head. "We're not leaving without him," she said firmly, her voice choked with emotion. Two firefighters brought over a stretcher, carefully lifting Skyler onto it. Lauren stayed close, her hand never leaving his side. "He saved her," she whispered to one of the firefighters, her voice cracking. "He saved my daughter's life." The man nodded solemnly, his gaze lingering on the heroic dog before he turned back to his crew. As the ambulance doors closed behind them, the sirens wailed, carrying them toward the nearest veterinary hospital. Emily held onto Skyler's paw the entire ride, whispering soft reassurances as tears rolled down her cheeks. "You're my hero, Skyler," she murmured. "Please don't leave me." Lauren could only watch, her heart aching with gratitude and fear. At the clinic, a team of veterinarians rushed Skyler into the treatment room, leaving Lauren and Emily in the waiting area. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as they sat there, Lauren's arm wrapped tightly around Emily's shoulders. The smell of antiseptic and the muffled sounds of hurried voices filled the air. But nothing could drown out the vivid memories of Skyler's bravery. "Mom," Emily said finally, breaking the heavy silence. "Do you think Skyler knows how much we love him?" Lauren blinked back tears, cupping Emily's face gently. "Sweetheart, I think he knows more than anyone. He showed us tonight that love isn't just a feeling. It's what you do for the ones you care about." Minutes turned to hours, and still, there was no news. Emily's small frame leaned heavily against Lauren's side, exhaustion finally catching up with her. But just as her eyes began to close, the door to the treatment room swung open, and a vet stepped out. His expression was grave, and Lauren's stomach tightened as he approached. "Skyler is stable for now," he began, his voice steady but tinged with concern. "He's a fighter, but his injuries are severe. We've done everything we can, but the next few hours will be critical." Lauren nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Emily, however, gripped the vet's sleeve, her voice shaking. "Can we see him? Please." The vet hesitated, then gestured for them to follow. Inside the room, Skyler lay on a soft blanket, an oxygen mask secured over his muzzle. His body was bandaged, his fur singed and patchy, but his tail gave the faintest wag when he saw them. Emily ran to his side, her tiny hands stroking his head gently. "You're so brave, Skyler," she whispered. "You're going to get better. I just know it." Lauren knelt beside her, her fingers lightly brushing against Skyler's paw. "You've always been there for us," she said softly. "Now it's our turn to be here for you." But as the night wore on and the room grew quieter, a question lingered in the air, unspoken but heavy with fear. Would Skyler's incredible courage be enough to see him through this battle? Or had he given everything he had to save the ones he loved? The quiet hum of the machines filled the room as Lauren and Emily stayed by Skyler's side, refusing to leave. Emily's small hand rested gently on Skyler's paw, her fingers tracing the edge of the bandage that wrapped around it. The dog's breathing was steady now, but faint, his chest rising and falling in a fragile rhythm. Lauren watched him closely, her heart heavy with gratitude and fear. As dawn broke and the first rays of sunlight spilled into the room, a vet entered with a clipboard in hand. She offered a small, sympathetic smile, but her expression carried a weight that Lauren braced herself to hear. "Skyler's vitals are holding steady," The vet began, her voice calm but measured. But the burns on his back legs are severe, and the smoke inhalation has caused significant damage to his lungs. He's fighting, and we'll do everything we can to support him. But it's important to prepare for the possibility that he may not recover. The words hit Lauren like a physical blow. Emily's head snapped up, her wide, tear-filled eyes searching the vet's face. "No," she said, her voice trembling. "Skyler's a hero. He has to get better. He just has to." The vet knelt beside her, her tone softening. "Skyler is a hero, Emily. He's one of the bravest dogs I've ever seen. Sometimes, heroes give everything they have because they love so deeply. But I promise, we'll do everything possible to help him. For now, just keep being here for him. He needs to feel your love." Emily's chin quivered, but she nodded, turning back to Skyler. She leaned in close and whispered, "You can do it, Skyler. You've always been the strongest. You saved me. Now let us save you." Lauren reached out, placing a comforting hand on Emily's back. "She's right, Skyler. You've always been our rock. But it's okay to rest now. We're here for you, just like you've always been here for us." As the hours passed, family, friends, and neighbors began to arrive at the clinic, each carrying flowers, cards, and small tokens of appreciation for the dog who had captured their hearts. News of Skyler's bravery had spread quickly, and the story of how he had saved Emily from the raging inferno had touched everyone who heard it. One by one, visitors approached Lauren and Emily, offering their support. Some shared stories of their own pets, while others simply hugged the Millers, their eyes glistening with emotion. It was clear that Skyler had become more than just a dog to this small community. He was a symbol of love, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bond between humans and their canine companions. As night fell again, Emily sat cross-legged beside Skyler, her voice soft as she read aloud from her favorite storybook. Lauren watched from a chair nearby, her heart aching at the sight of her daughter's unwavering hope. She marveled at the connection between Emily and Skyler, a bond so pure and strong it seemed almost unbreakable. But as the hours wore on and the quiet hum of the machines continued, Lauren couldn't shake the question that had been haunting her since the fire. Could Skyler, who had already given so much, find the strength to pull through? Or had he already completed his final act of love? The answer, she knew, would come soon enough. For now, all they could do was wait and pray. The next morning, the clinic was unusually quiet, the sunlight filtering through the blinds casting soft patterns on the walls. Skyler lay still, his breath shallow but steady. Emily hadn't left his side, her small hand resting on his paw as she whispered stories and sang lullabies. Lauren sat beside her, her eyes red from a sleepless night, silently praying for a miracle. As the hours passed, Skyler stirred slightly, his tail giving the faintest wag. Emily gasped, her face lighting up with hope. "Mom, he's waking up," she whispered excitedly, leaning closer to him. Skyler's amber eyes opened just a sliver, their usual brightness dim but filled with recognition. He looked at Emily, and for a brief moment, it was as if time stood still. "You're so brave, Skyler," Emily said, her voice trembling. "You're my hero. I love you so much." Lauren reached out, stroking Skyler's head gently. "We're so proud of you. Boy, you've given us everything. You saved her. Skyler, you saved our family." Skyler's eyes flickered between the two of them, his gaze soft and filled with an indescribable warmth. Even in his weakened state, his loyalty and love shone through, as if to reassure them that he had no regrets. The vet entered quietly, her expression calm but somber. She checked Skyler's vitals and adjusted the machines surrounding him. Then she knelt beside Emily and Lauren. "Skyler's a fighter," she said softly, "but his body has been through so much. He's holding on for you, but it's okay to let him know he can rest if he needs to." Emily's lip quivered as tears spilled down her cheeks. "But I don't want him to go," she whispered, clutching Floppy tightly. Lauren's heart broke as she pulled her daughter into a gentle embrace. Sweetheart, Skyler knows how much we love him. He's stayed with us this long because he loves us, too. But sometimes, the greatest act of love is letting someone rest. Emily nodded slowly, her small hand trembling as she placed it back on Skyler's paw. It's okay, Skyler, she said softly, her voice breaking. You don't have to keep fighting. You're the best dog in the whole world. And I'll never forget you. Skyler let out a soft whine, his eyes closing as if he understood her words. His breathing slowed, each rise and fall of his chest more labored than the last. Lauren leaned down, her tears falling onto his fur. Thank you, she whispered, for everything, for loving us so much. The room fell silent as Skyler took his final breath, his body relaxing into a peaceful stillness. Emily buried her face in his fur, her sobs breaking the quiet. Lauren held her close, her own tears streaming down her face as she stroked Skyler's head one last time. For a moment, felt as if the world had stopped. The weight of Skyler's absence was crushing, but so was the immense love he had left behind. He had given them everything, his loyalty and courage, a legacy that would live on forever in their hearts. Days later, the Miller family stood on the hill overlooking what remained of their home. The fire had taken nearly everything, but amidst the ashes, they found something extraordinary. Skyler's collar, slightly charred but intact. Lauren picked it up, holding it tightly as Emily looked on. We'll plant a tree here, Lauren said, her voice soft but steady. A place to remember Skyler and everything he gave us. Emily nodded, clutching Floppy to her chest. He'll always be with us, she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. Always. As the tree took root in the weeks that followed, neighbors came to visit, sharing stories of Skyler's bravery. The community rallied around the Millers, building a new home and ensuring that Skyler's heroism would never be forgotten. Though Skyler was gone, his spirit lived on in the love and strength he had given his family, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, the light of loyalty and courage could shine through. The days following Skyler's passing were heavy with silence. The once lively Miller household, filled with laughter and the familiar sound of paws on the floor, now seemed unbearably empty. Emily clung to Skyler's collar, holding it close to her chest every night as if it were the last piece of him she had left. Lauren did her best to stay strong, but there were moments when the grief overwhelmed her. Quiet tears shed over the kitchen sink, or a sob muffled into her pillow when she thought Emily was asleep. But in the midst of their sorrow, something began to stir, small, quiet acts of kindness that started to pull them from the depths of their grief. Neighbors dropped by daily, bringing meals, hugs, and words of encouragement. One morning, Emily found a small wooden box on the porch. Inside was a plaque engraved with Skyler's name and the words, "A hero who will never be forgotten." The town came together to help the Millers rebuild. Volunteers arrived with tools and materials, working tirelessly to clear the debris left by the fire. Children from Emily's school painted signs and decorations for the new home, each one adorned with paw prints and hearts in honor of Skyler. The community's love reminded Lauren and Emily that they weren't alone, and that Skyler's sacrifice had touched lives far beyond their own. One afternoon, as they stood on the charred remains of their property, Lauren knelt beside Emily, holding the plaque in her hands. "I think it's time we give Skyler a place to rest," she said softly. Emily nodded, her tears falling silently. Together, they dug a small hole beneath the largest oak tree on the edge of the property, its roots miraculously spared by the flames. Placing the plaque in the ground, Emily whispered, "Thank you, Skyler, for saving me, for being my best friend, and for loving me even when it was hard. I'll never forget you." She placed Floppy, the stuffed bunny Skyler had saved from the fire, beside the plaque, knowing he would always be with her. Over the following weeks, a new sense of purpose emerged. Inspired by Skyler's bravery, Emily and Lauren decided to plant a garden around the oak tree, filling it with flowers that symbolized resilience and hope. Bright sunflowers reached toward the sky, surrounded by wildflowers of every color. It became a sanctuary, a place where they could remember Skyler and find peace in the beauty of life continuing. One day, as they worked together in the garden, Emily looked up at her mother. "Do you think Skyler would be proud of us?" she asked, her voice small but steady. Lauren smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "I know he would. He gave us so much love. And now we're sharing that love with the world. That's what he would have wanted." Their efforts didn't stop at the garden. Lauren and Emily began volunteering at a local animal shelter, sharing Skyler's story with anyone who would listen. They helped other families find pets to love, emphasizing the incredible bond that could form between humans and animals. One day, while helping a young boy choose his first puppy, Emily noticed the way his eyes lit up as the tiny dog licked his face. It reminded her of the first time she met Skyler, and for the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of joy. As the new house took shape, the Miller family invited the community to a ceremony under the oak tree. It was a bittersweet event, filled with tears and laughter as neighbors shared their own memories of Skyler. One man recounted how Skyler had once barked to alert him of a bear near his property, while another woman remembered how Skyler always wagged his tail whenever he passed her garden. Emily stood beside the oak tree, holding the collar that Skyler had worn on the night of the fire. Her voice wavered as she spoke, but her words carried the strength of a girl who had been transformed by love and loss. "Skyler wasn't just a dog," she said. "He was family. He taught me what it means to be brave, to love with your whole heart, and to never give up on the people you care about. This garden is for him, but it's also for everyone who's ever been saved by love." As the sun set that evening, the garden seemed to glow with a quiet magic. Fireflies danced among the flowers, and the breeze carried a warmth that felt almost tangible. Emily sat beneath the oak tree, her head resting on Lauren's shoulder. As they watched the lights flicker in the twilight, it was as if Skyler was there with them, his presence woven into every petal, every leaf, every breath of wind. Though their hearts still ached, the Millers found solace in the legacy Skyler had left behind. He had given them more than his life. He had given them the courage to keep living, to find beauty in the ashes, and to carry his love forward into the world. Months passed, and while the Miller family's home was rebuilt, their lives had been forever changed. Skyler's garden had grown lush and vibrant, a living testament to the love and courage of their loyal companion. Emily visited the garden daily, talking to Skyler as though he were still there, sharing her thoughts, her dreams, and her gratitude. The story of Skyler's bravery had spread far beyond Pinecrest. A local journalist had written an article about him, which quickly went viral, sparking an outpouring of admiration and support. Letters and messages poured in from across the country. People shared their own stories of pets who had changed their lives, and many thanked the Millers for reminding them of the profound connection between humans and animals. One letter, however, stood out. It came from a national animal rescue organization that had read about Skyler and wanted to honor his legacy. They proposed creating a foundation in his name, dedicated to rescuing and rehabilitating abandoned and abused dogs. Lauren and Emily were overwhelmed by the idea. After days of reflection, they agreed this was the perfect way to ensure Skyler's courage and love would continue to inspire others. The Skyler Foundation was born, and its mission was simple: to give dogs a second chance at life and to connect them with families who needed them just as much. The foundation hosted adoption events, funded medical care for injured animals, and educated communities about the importance of rescue and responsible pet ownership. Emily became its youngest ambassador, sharing her story at events and schools, her voice trembling but strong as she spoke of the dog who had saved her life. On the one-year anniversary of the fire, the Millers hosted a grand dedication ceremony at Skyler's garden. The event drew a crowd far larger than they had anticipated. People traveled from neighboring towns, and even reporters arrived to capture the story of a dog who had become a symbol of hope. The oak tree, now surrounded by colorful flowers and a small stone pathway, stood tall and strong, its branches casting dappled shadows over the crowd. Emily, now a year older and wiser beyond her years, stood before the gathering. In her hands, she held Skyler's collar, its metal tag reflecting the golden light of the setting sun. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding as she began to speak. "Skyler wasn't just a hero to me," she said, her voice steady. "He was a hero to everyone who knew him. He showed us that love is more powerful than fear, and that bravery isn't about being unafraid, it's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. This garden is a place to remember him, but it's also a place to celebrate the love that all animals bring into our lives." She paused, looking down at the collar in her hands. "Skyler gave everything to save me. Now it's my turn to give back in his name. I hope this garden, and the foundation we've created, will help other families find their own Skyler, a companion who will change their lives forever." The crowd erupted into applause, tears shining in many eyes. Lauren stepped forward, placing a hand on Emily's shoulder as they unveiled a bronze statue of Skyler, standing proud with his head held high. The plaque at its base read, "Skyler, a hero's love lives forever." In the months that followed, the foundation thrived. Families who adopted through the program sent letters and photos, sharing stories of how their new pets had brought joy and healing into their lives. Each time Emily read one, she felt a spark of pride, knowing that Skyler's legacy was alive and growing. One evening, as Emily sat beneath the oak tree, a soft breeze rustled the leaves above her. She looked up at the stars, clutching Floppy in her lap. "We're doing good things, Skyler," she whispered. "Because of you." As if in answer, a firefly drifted down, landing gently on her hand. Emily smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. She knew, deep in her heart, that Skyler's love would always be with her, guiding her, inspiring her, and lighting the way for others to find hope. Though the flames had taken much, they could never extinguish the light Skyler had left behind. His story, his courage, and his unwavering love would live on, not only in the garden they had built, but in the countless lives he continued to touch. Skyler was more than a dog, he was a legacy, a hero, a friend, and his love, like the roots of the oak tree, would endure forever. Did Skyler's story touch your heart? This incredible tale of courage, love, and sacrifice has left so many of us in tears, reminding us of the unbreakable bond between humans and their animal companions. If you found Skyler's journey as moving as we did, comment 2 below. If it didn't quite hit the mark for you, feel free to comment 7. We value your honest thoughts. And if you believe stories like Skyler's deserve to be shared with the world, don't keep this to yourself. Hit that share button to spread his legacy of loyalty and bravery. Let's inspire others to see the beauty in the connections we share with our pets and loved ones. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Tapestry of Worlds for more heartfelt stories that will uplift, inspire, and bring you closer to the extraordinary moments of life. Skyler's story is just the beginning. Let's keep the spirit of love and resilience alive together.